lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and with me today, I have a fellow CKRS member. I have Manny Gomez with me to do a little guest spot on here with me to talk Last Ronin. Huge Turtles fan. If you're a fan of the show, if you watch the show, you know I've done a lot of Turtle coverage. And with the hardcover coming out, wanted to have him on. I think we were going to do this. We planned this way before, but then when I realized that the hardcover is coming out, it just made sense to just wait till it came out. But welcome to the show, dude.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan. I've watched pretty much all your videos, and I mean, I know we've chatted on the CK group before too. So
yeah. So for everybody that listening and watching, give them a little background on you. I know you write for Monkeys Fighting Robots.
I do, yeah. I write for Monkeys Fighting Robots. I have for a number of years now. Mainly what I do now is I cover like self-published and indie comics because that's what I like best. But I do a lot of interviews, and I used to do a lot of reviews of weekly books, but I kind of found it hard to really write passionately about that week to week. So I decided it'd much be better to stick to something that I generate. And yeah, so I mean, I love doing it. It keeps me in contact with a lot of cool artists, and it's led me to a lot of cool Kickstarters, things like that, which I've been supporting. And so, other than the writing, I'm also a big comic book fan. I have been for my whole life since I was a kid. It's like the one hobby that has stuck through every stage of my life,
Same here. Yeah, I never gave it up, or even if I wasn't like entrenched in it, I still was always reading them,
Yeah, it's same. Like, I mean, the amount of comics I read, go up and down over the years, and there's times where I'm reading very little, but I'm always looking into what's going on, checking out what's going on with comics, because like it's something I'm probably always gonna love,
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I know what you mean about the writing the weekly reviews for the stuff coming out. I found it hard too, because it's like, well, what do I really say about this that I couldn't have said at the end of the arc or something,
That's exactly it. Yeah. So, like as much as I do like reading comics like month to month like that, at least sometimes I don't know if reviewing them is the best, because you're, in a sense, especially the way they're written now, you're just reviewing like a snippet of the whole story. So it's hard to sort of give
it's like
a specific grade to like a second act, essentially,
Well, yeah, it's like if let's say it's a 4-issue arc, it's like you're, if you compared it to like a movie, it's like you're reviewing a quarter of the movie and that's it.
Exactly.
And you're ignoring the rest. Yeah, I get you. Well, let's jump into Last Ronin, dude.
Let's do it, man.
I know how much of a huge Turtles fan you are. Eli, that's how our friendship started at the shop, because I saw that he was on the pull list for the Ninja Turtles where I work. And so like I mean, dude, I like going back to like the 80s cartoon obviously was my introduction to the Turtles. And then as I got older, I realized there was a comic book, and it was nothing like that show. It was more like the 90s movie, which was I think that was my first movie I ever saw at the theater too. So the Turtles have always been.
Because I also remember being a fan of the cartoon, and then I think it was like at a Walden Books, like in a mall, I found like one of the first comics, like color classics, like reprints of the original comics. And I remember it was I think it was volume 2, which is when one of the turtles gets really hurt by the Foot Clan, and there's like that big fight in April's apartment. And I specifically remember reading that volume and like being struck by how dire and violent and everything was in that comic book that was nothing like the cartoon. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, like the foot soldiers aren't robots in this, like the ninjas they are, like, and then once I found that out, man, it was like
yeah, I think that finding the Turtles comics, like I think I mean, obviously it was years after the 80s cartoons. I was probably in middle school when I found, the original Mirage. But I went back and I got the entire run. I don't have the first printing of number 1, but I have the fourth printing of that, and then I got like I got the entire run of that. The second volume is a little harder. The third one with Image, I don't have. But with this, and then the fourth volume when Peter Laird brought it back, I have almost all of that, but those last few issues are like such a small print run, like they're damn near impossible to find. So like when I remember when IDW got the license, I mean, I was itching for a Turtles comic again. So the fact that it's still going strong, the fact that they got Kevin Eastman back, and you know he's so firmly entrenched in what they're doing and very active, that made it more appealing than if it was just IDW putting out a Turtles comic. I don't think I would have been as excited. Just knowing that one of the creators was back was enough to fucking lure me in. And then they announced this, dude. And I think what did they announce it at? They announced it at like SDCC, I think, right? Like a few years ago. I don't remember, but it was like a real, like the image they gave us. It just said, I think it was like what, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember because it's like, I wasn't reading the regular Turtles comic at the time, and hearing that was coming out sort of made me go, oh, let me check out what's going on with the monthly, and I added it to my pull list, you know. So really it was because of that book being announced. But yeah, I remember as soon as that book announced, man, like the title, like in my head, I was like, that's just perfect. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just perfect, man. You know, like that's almost like one of those no-brainer ideas. Like, of course, this is the way that this story would probably end. And like, what a great concept, man. You know, like,
oh, for sure.
I know a lot of people are cynical and like the old man concept has been done to death. They've done Old Man Logan, Old Man Hawkeye, and you know, pretty much every character. And you know, yeah, I agree with some characters they may feel tacked on, but with this story and like the theme the Turtles have always had, and like the whole like ninja theme, like it makes sense to me. You know, like I think it's actually like kind of a very good appropriate ending for the mythology. You know, like whenever, if this story ever takes place, but whenever it may take place. You know.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that, you know, well, we're gonna spoil it. So if you haven't read it, I mean, you probably shouldn't listen to this. But I remember just thinking like, well, it also makes sense because they're so heavily influenced by like Kirby and Frank Miller, and they say it in the original run, and Eastman does it again at the afterward of this. And I think you messaged me yesterday, and I totally agreed that it has huge like Dark Knight Returns vibes to it. Like even so much as like the end of the book. Yeah, like all I pictured was Batman fighting the fucking mutant
leader. Yeah, for sure, man. You know, and just like you know, on the second read, we also talked about this when I messaged you. Like, you know, I read it all in one sitting, which, not that I didn't enjoy it monthly, but like it did have a much bigger impact, I think, when I read it. Yeah. In like a short spurt. But what was my train of thought? Oh yeah, I was realizing like little things like how hulking, you know, another spoiler, Michelangelo is the Last Ronin, you know.
Yeah.
But how big and kind of like bulky and hulking he looks. That's like another sort of like Dark Knight reference, because you know he is kind of like the bruised and battered Batman in that, you know, right down to like the narration, you know, and like the narration is kind of like a hard boiled, you know, and it works because, like, you know, until the reveal at the end of issue 1, you don't know which turtle it is, and the narration, I try to look for hints in the narration, but you really can't find any, you know, like.
Definitely did a great job with the narration where you don't know, and I think that I love that he has all their weapons, like even just that first cover where you see all of them, and that way you don't know, so you know that he's the last, and he's got all the brothers' weapons. But I think a lot of people thought it was Raph. I mean, and I think that if they would have made it Raph, that would have. I don't think it would have cheapened the story, but I don't think it would have had this same impact, because Michelangelo was always like the happy-go-lucky, the carefree turtle. So to see him in this light, you're like, damn, dude, some shit had to have gone down. And you don't get it all at once. You get it over the course of the 5 issues where you learn how each brother died, right? And
yeah, exactly. I was going to mention like the narrative really struck me on the second read through, because like, although it felt more compressed and intense, like you said, like it does sort of you know, develop at this like clip that just keeps you like you know, in an emotional kind of like train, you know, where you're just barreling towards an ending.
Yeah,
it's very well written, and like as much as like, you know, like you and I are like huge Turtles fans, and you know, would probably, you know, read something like this anyway. I think even someone that was like kind of like a casual Turtles fan could also sort of pick this up, which I think is part of its strength, because like the mythology is so well known, and they do a good job of using, like, you know, most of the main players that most people that are like even aware of the turtles, it's just a pop culture thing, and maybe haven't even read the comics, seen only the cartoons, or just, you know, or know the property. They could probably pick this up and still have a really good read with it. Like, it's not one of these deep dives into like the turtles mythology either. Like, it just I don't know, it works on so many levels that, like, I think it's, like, you know, probably one of the more successful, like, you know, like these sort of, like, you know, spins on Dark Knight that we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I definitely think that this has the potential to be like one of those kind of evergreen books, and lead, you know what I mean? Like, where you can just, somebody's like, I want to read Ninja Turtle, boom, Last Ronin would probably be the easiest book you could hand them. And I mean, I watched it firsthand because I mean, right now I'm only part-time. I only work a half a shift a week at the shop, and that's just because I couldn't fully leave when I went back to my old job. But I watched Last Ronin blow up at the shop. Like, first of all, number one was allocated. So if you order 200 issues or 200 copies of number one, you didn't necessarily get it. And IDW, I think, really underestimated how well it would do. So they didn't print a lot. Well, I mean, they printed a lot, but not enough to meet the full demand. So that's why I went to multiple printings. And watching, like you just said, like, that led you to the IDW series. You're not the only one. Like, there were so many people that hadn't read a Ninja Turtles comic, didn't even know there was a Ninja Turtles comic still being made.
Yeah.
And it just brought so many fans into it. Now, there was a lot of speculators that came in because they thought it was a high, not a expensive book, but it did jump immediately. It was already a $50 book.
Yeah, and there was tons of variants too, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I think that, you know, I didn't read obviously I only mentioned Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, but I'll read the credits real quick. You know, like Tom Waltz, who's been like a mainstay since IDW got the property. He did the story also. So the story was based off of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird's old idea. I don't know how involved he was with this, but, and Tom Waltz and Eastman did the script, and Isao Escorza and his brother Isaac, they did the pencils, Ben Bishop, Kevin Eastman, and then did those like flashbacks. But I think that, not that I don't like what's going on in the current Turtles comic, I do. It's just, it feels like it's gotten so expansive that there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many different mutants now, like Mutant Town, that it was nice to kind of get back to just something a little bit smaller, and, you know what I mean? Like, not as big. And also, and I told somebody this the other day at the shop, this is clearly not the future version of what we're reading now. This is clearly the future version of like the original Mirage series.
Exactly, yeah.
And and that also like made, for me at least, I enjoyed it more because I liked it better when it's just the brothers. I don't think it doesn't cheapen the Turtles, but it's just like
I know what you mean, and like, I love the regular monthly too, but it's one of those comics where, like, sometimes I have to pause when I'm reading it and sort of like actively try and remember what's been going on, because there's so much, you know, like so many characters and everything. Like, you know, it sometimes, you know, doesn't exactly even feel like a Turtles comic because they figure so small into some of the stories. But again, I do still like it because I do like the supporting cast, and like, I like and everything else. But yeah, this is special, and like you said, it's definitely like a period for the original Mirage series. And like, you know, if that's the Turtles that you know, you're especially gonna love this, because, you know, it's in that second read through that I realized how heavy this really gets, because, you know, like, at one point, like, Michelangelo's about to commit like ritual suicide, like, and I think that, I mean, like, I knew that in my first reading, but like, since I was like so focused on this second read, I was like, damn, man, they go hard on this, you know. And like, it's really good, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see, you know, Michelangelo, like you said, is like usually not in this light, right? And like, watching him recount his brother's deaths, like, it's, and like, you watch the way they go out, you know, and like, that like, you can see why is the way he is. And like, even so much as where he sees them and he talks to them at their ghosts, you know, and like that, and like, even the dialogue between them, and, you know, towards the end, when finally he tells him basically, you know, go away, like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Seeing April with a missing leg, a missing arm. You know,
Yeah.
her daughter with Casey Jones. I like that. I thought that was cool to introduce.
I thought that was cool too. And
yeah,
I do like the spin on her having like her parents having been exposed to mutagen so long. Like she's sort of a mutant herself. Like she's, you know, stronger, you know, like more endurance. So
yeah, I know, and I like that they didn't have to like make it super technical. It's just like, well, they were around the Turtles and Splinter so much that this is what happened, and you just accept it. You know,
yeah.
It could be to the point where like, well, how does that make sense? Like, were they radiating like stuff off their bodies? But when you're reading it, you don't feel it.
They are Ninja Turtles, you know.
Yeah,
right?
and you're reading a fucking comic, you know. Like I just thought that all of that, I really, dude, and then the flashbacks by Eastman. Not that I didn't like Ben Bishop's, but Eastman's with the old school duotone was really cool to see.
Yeah, dude, that was a highlight. Like I stared at those quite a bit because the second time I read it digitally because my shop was out of the hardcover, so I ordered it, but it won't be here in time.
Mm-hmm.
But that sequence just looks beautiful, man.
Yeah. I mean, and it's
not that the regular art doesn't, because it really does. You know, for the regular art being like modern, like there's still a lot of grit to it, especially in like the detail in the faces. Like I like the way that they make April look older. You know, like
yeah.
Like, you know, without making her a caricature. And like, you know, I also like the way that he draws, like, you know, like this future version. They draw this future version of Michelangelo. Like he's you know, it's said as a side like a little side remark, but like I guess towards the end of his life, his body was continuing to mutate, which explains why like essentially he's also dying because of it. Is the
yeah. I mean, I don't know the story behind it, but I know that Andy Kuhn was originally attached as an artist on this book. And I remember, I don't know if you remember when they had those ash cans, those also went for a lot of money immediately, but they sent them to stores and that had Andy Kuhn art in it. So I don't know why the change of artist, not that I'm not trying to like stir drama into this, but I do think that that's interesting that they changed artists, because I've never heard of these artists before this book.
But, me neither, and I didn't know
that. But they definitely did an amazing job.
Oh, they did, you know, and like the pencils, although they're slick, obviously compared to anything that like was ever done in the original run. Like I said, there's still enough grit to the actual characters where it works. You know, it's a fine balance, but I do enjoy it. But I mean, would like to see that version you said by Andy Kuhn? Yeah, I mean, now that you put that in my head, I would have liked to have seen that. But.
Yes, I mean, so do I. I mean, I remember flipping through it, and I kind of wish I didn't sell my ash can. I should have probably kept it, but you know, whatever. I mean, this is still a beautiful book, and it's like the what if of seeing it drawn by somebody else. Yeah, it would be cool, but you know, I was introduced to two artists.
Don't let that deter you from.
Yeah, we're introduced to two artists I never heard of before, and they fucking killed it. And I am super particular about the way the turtles are drawn, because
I am too.
Sometimes I see them drawn, I'm like, that is not.
No, and they do a good job with the faces and everything. You know, like it's you know, the turtles are like a deceptive set of characters, I think, because I mean, I'm not an artist by any means.
Yeah, me either.
But one of the few things I can draw is like a Ninja Turtle head, because they're very easy to draw, but they're also very hard, I think, because like it's real easy to do sort of like a bad Ninja Turtle. I think it's harder to do a good one, because like it's such a silly concept at its first, you know, thought. Yeah. That like, you know, like it's already prone to being sort of a parody, you know, to make it being taken seriously is kind of a tight balancing act. And they do it in this book, you know, like like I said, this Michelangelo looks older, more beaten, like grittier. So it you know, it looks enough like a Ninja Turtle, but it does look like, you know, like what you would imagine a turtle would look like when they're older. So they do a good job with Michelangelo and all the main characters.
Yeah, I think that everything about this book, to me, like I gave it a 5 out of 5 on my Goodreads, because I find very little wrong with it. I think that even my manager,
I think just the delays between issues and like little minor
that hurt it.
Yeah,
that I think hurt momentum.
The way it read, because like it is a story I think that you want to read with each chapter pretty fresh in your mind, and like I think yeah, as much as I bought the single issues because I liked having them, it is one of those things that I think reads better in like one fell swoop, whether it's one or two sittings, you know, like
Yeah.
because it's such a complete, tight story that like it just reads better that way.
No, I totally agree. I mean, there was months and months between issues, you know. And
Yeah, so it made it hard to stay like vested emotionally. But when you read it, one thing that struck me is how compressed the actual time of the story itself is, because like we get all these flashbacks which sort of trick you into thinking like there's a lot of time passing, but really this is only like a matter of like what 2 or 3 days I think this takes place over, because it seems like April finds Michelangelo, he gets the team up with Casey, and then there's a fight with Shredder's grandson at the end, and it's only maybe 48 hours or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, definitely no more than like 3 days, at
Yeah.
least the way I'm perceiving it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, especially I think because we had such a big gap between reading it, you didn't really feel that it was over the span of like a short period of time.
Because you feel it when you read it like this, and
yeah,
and you feel that desperation that Michelangelo has, and it's interesting, like what you said earlier, that they made it Michelangelo, and it is perfect because it makes it that more tragic. Because through reading this, I had like the fanboy concepts in my head, like, oh, like what would this story have been like if it was Raphael, or what would the story be like if it was Donatello, and like, yeah, all of those you could probably make an interesting story out of. But Michelangelo, like, is again, like, the concept itself is kind of a duh. You don't get any mention of like a shredder coming back to life, which like like you could easily see someone like wanting to do, and that could have been really cheesy. Like it's very elegant that way too. It like you said, it keeps it simple. The four turtles, April, Casey, Splinter, and you get enough in the dialogue to know that there was this whole other world that was around, because you do get like quick glimpses at Baxter Stockman and the Mousers, but keeping like the cast so small just added to that intensity, and it kept it like more of a personal story. And like we talked about, at its core, and it's mentioned here at the end, this is really just a story about four brothers. So when you keep it to them, it's gonna work best.
I totally agree. And I think that like this type of, I don't want to say behavior, maybe that's not the right word, but like you could see Raph acted like this already. This was Raph's personality,
Exactly.
Donatello, maybe that would have been, to me, like it had to have been Donatello or Michelangelo for it to be a shock. Because Leonardo, you could see being the last Ronin, right?
Yeah,
the last warrior.
Leonardo's always been the leader, so he would accept the role, like he accepts everything,
Yeah.
Ralph probably would have just gone even more crazy, probably, or gone on like a spree,
Yeah. Well, I think his ending in here makes sense too, and that's why he couldn't have been it. And that's like he just like went out in a blaze of glory. You know what I mean? He just
which is how he would go. Yeah.
Like, so it makes sense for him to not survive, because he would have gone out this way, But I think that the story of Michelangelo, what he had to go through, I think that it doesn't hold the same emotional impact if it was anybody else. If you wanted to tell this story, like obviously the story would have had to be a lot different if you put another turtle in this role. And I really hope they don't revisit it. That's like my one takeaway after reading it again. Like,
no, this needs to be a done and one. This needs to be a little gem and be left alone. Like no, like part two where there's someone else is alive, or following the continued adventures of like Casey and April's daughter. Like no, like I think this is just keep it as it is. Like don't let it get out of hand now. I have a feeling that's gonna be it, because I don't really see what they could spin out of this that would work.
Well, I'm thinking more like don't do a before the Last Ronin type of story, like a prequel, because they could do what you said, which is do Casey's daughter, but it's like it's not interesting. The whole point of this story is the war between the Oroku the Roku and Hamato Yoshi clan, right? Like that's the point of it at the beginning and end. That's all it is. If you look at it if you just in a microcosm, that's what this story is. And just leave it. I hope they leave it alone, because so many, I know IDW is not like Marvel or DC, but if this was a Marvel or DC book, we would have got one shots.
Oh yeah, you would have already had like
spin-offs.
Last Ronin, like, you know, Splinter something, or Last Ronin, you know, you would have had a ton of things.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking about their deaths too, like you're right, like each turtle goes down like thematically exactly as like how they kind of would based on
Hmm.
their personalities. And like I I just like everything about the setup, how they're, you know, they're sort of spread out in different areas, so they're not even together
Yeah.
when it happens, which makes it even that much sadder, you know?
Yeah. And then and then it's Leo and Casey go out
Yeah.
together, which was
You'd
a
think it would
little,
be Leo and Raph because like those are the buds, you know, but
yeah, yeah. Which also kind of made it interesting, you know, like, but I think that they perfectly like they take every single character and give each character their own moment, you know, whereas
yeah,
it could have, you could have gotten none of the flashbacks. You could have just gone, and if you take those flashbacks out, it's still a good story.
yeah,
But I think the emotional impact that we get in each chapter, because we get a little bit each time,
yeah,
and I think that is kind of what kept me invested. Not that I wouldn't have kept getting the book anyway, but each issue, because there was such a large gap, each issue had like that hit where you're like, oh
yeah.
fuck, you know?
And I think it was, you know, at first when I started reading it, you started wondering like, all right, so when, you know, when is the big reveal of the Last Ronin gonna get here? And you know, they do it pretty early on. It's at the end of issue 1.
Yeah,
And you know, I think it's to that benefit because obviously like that's like when the book was coming out, like, you know, even some of my coworkers that don't normally read a lot of comics, you know, were aware of it because, you know, it's everywhere. And like even we would have conversations like, oh, like who do you think it's gonna be? So, you know, obviously like that speculation is what drove a lot of interest. So, you know, you get it out of the way quickly, like it wouldn't work if that was the only sort of hook you had to the story. But like you said, like the emotional payoff as to how he became the Last Ronin is really what it's about. You know, it's almost like, all right, yeah, sure, there's the mystery of who it is, but getting that out of the way quickly to me is a very smart idea because it puts now that out of the reader's mind, and they're going to be so much more focused on the characters and the story instead of just like waiting for the spoiler of who it is, you know. And honestly, you know, finding out how it happened is emotionally and you know, narratively much more satisfying in the end than finding out who it is, you know.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just I love this book. I can't say enough about it. I'm just gonna keep repeating different
Yeah,
parts
it's
about it.
definitely, you know, like when I do like, you know, like my favorite books of the year, I guess this one would count for this year because it finished this year.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Right. Issue 5 came out what, like 3 months ago or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I know it's always hard for me to pick. You know,
Yeah,
when I
because
do
well,
my,
it started last year, so it's, but I mean, whatever year it is, it's definitely gonna, you know, it's definitely a best book of the year material.
oh, dude, for sure.
Like
And I think
if
that
you're a Turtles fan, you really need to read it. I
I
mean,
think
it's,
anybody, you know, I
yeah,
think that this is the
it's just
book that
good
you could
comics
hand
at
to
the end of the
anybody.
day. It's just good comics, and even if you're not a Turtles fan, like I said, you know, if the TMT has permeated popular culture so much that most people are at least vaguely aware of who the 4 turtles are, can name them,
Yeah,
knows that they fight Shredder, and knows they had a Master Splinter. Honestly, all you need to read this is that piece of information, and this will work.
yeah. I think
The
that that's
turtles are
so
like
so
Star
true.
Wars and like even now the Marvel movies, like the mythology is now so ingrained in pop culture that like, you know, 8 out of 10 people can name you all 4 turtles guaranteed, you know, like
Yeah, I would say even more than some of the Marvel characters, because if you think about it, to when we were kids, man, you know, like
they've been
Ninja,
evergreen since they've been out, for
yeah,
real.
Ninja Turtles were. I mean, people knew who the Ninja Turtles were, didn't even know who the fuck Iron Man was.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there was a point where like they didn't know Iron Man. They didn't know most of the Avengers characters, but they
But they
knew who the
knew
Ninja
Leonardo,
Turtles.
Michelangelo, Raphael, you know,
Yeah,
and
dude, it's so crazy. This the story. I mean, I could talk about Turtles for hours because it's just, it is from their beginnings until now. It's just crazy how like they've had, it's a generational thing. You know, like
yeah,
I was like, my brother and I are like almost 12 years apart, but he had his own version of Turtles. You know, the 2003 cartoon, which in my opinion is probably one of the best adaptations that they did because it
yeah.
adhered.
See, my nephews went through it too, so I got to experience that, you know, as they watched that. So you're right. You know, it's like each generation has had its own iteration of the turtles, and like, you know, each one is a little different, but the core of the concept is there. It's just as the core personality of the four turtles, which
Yeah.
you know never changes, which is what makes it such a great property. You know, like that they're, you can easily, you know, not read anything turtles for 30 years and then pick even this up, and like, you know, Donatello's personality is immediately evident. You know, it's just the characters are some of the, I think, for such a silly concept that it's at its, you know, first glance, like, are probably some of the best comic characters in my opinion that I can name. I mean, it's
I agree, and I think that it's
fantastic.
because they take a silly concept, but they didn't treat it silly.
Exactly. And Last Ronin deserves to be on the shelf next to like your original turtle comics. Like it, like you said earlier, this is definitely an ending to that storyline. You know, you can sort of attach it to any really, you know, but it is specifically to that storyline, and in that matter, it works so beautifully.
Yeah, I
mean,
think
to the
that.
point where, like, now I want to go back and reread the original run again. You know, like it's been a while since I've really sort of sat down and read it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I read it every couple of years just because it's, well, sometimes it's harder because I don't have all the trades of the original run, so I have to dig through my short box and like read it by single issues, which I don't mind because I love the smell of old newsprint. So I'm always down to.
I wish I had that. I have one of the graphic novels. I have the first volume, and then the other ones are on Comixology Unlimited, which I have. So I have them downloaded. So I always have them. It's cool. They have both your black and white and color classics on there. And my first introduction to them, like I said earlier, was the color classics. So I didn't even know they were in black and white till much later. And I like both.
Yeah, I don't think I've read like the color ones on that IDW put out, but I have a hard time reading like when they color old black and white comics and it's super bright, you know, on the bright white paper. So I kind of want to, I'll probably look for those first comics trades just so I can see the way it was printed on that. But
it's interesting, and for a lot of people, those were the first ones that I found in bookstores, you know, and like, yeah, it was awesome that this finally came out. Like, I mean, and it's so rare that a book that's hyped so much lives up to the hype, and like it's so nice that this really did. You know, that doesn't happen often. You know, things always sort of fall short of expectation, but
yeah,
to me, this not only met them, it exceeded them.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, not only did it hit the mark, but I think that it's hard for something that's hyped to not only start strong but finish strong. And I think that's what this did.
It doesn't waver in the middle like a lot of like comics do, or any storyline does. You know, there's really no lull in the pacing, and all that was so evident when I read it, like you know, over the last couple of days, because it's very tightly plotted, tightly written. It's just you can tell that this was not like something that was not done with care. Everybody that was involved clearly had a lot of love for this project, and and that's why it works also.
Yeah, I think that just everything IDW has done turtles related, like, yes, a lot of people, when you think IDW, you think of like licensed properties and stuff, but I think
but I mean, you know, everyone did those back in the day. Marvel did tons of them, and no one.
Oh yeah, I know, like, they throw shade at IDW, but I think IDW for such a long time has been consistently putting out. I mean, I don't read all the other properties. I'm not like huge Transformers or GI Joe, stuff like that, but those fans love that stuff, and I know that.
Oh, they do. I mean, I see people buying them at my local shop all the time, and you know, don't forget they also do the artist edition books. So like,
oh, I know, dude, they fucking put out some great artist edition.
I think IDW is run by people who are passionate about the medium.
Agreed, and I think that
they're doing licensed comics because they got to make some bucks too. You know, like I don't think they could survive on artist editions alone. You know.
Yeah. I think and I think that. Go ahead,
I think they do everything with great care, especially the turtles. They've treated the turtles property, from what I've gone back and read and from what I'm reading now, like with great care. And you know, they still pay mad respect to Kevin Eastman all the time. You know, he's always drawing an alternate cover for them, and you can tell that like that consultant credit he's getting is probably not bullshit. I think they really do sort of, like, even though they might not even really have to, I think they'd sort of include him. I get that feeling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely think they do. And I think that that's why it is such a strong property for them, because you are you know, like you are including one of the dudes that created this concept, and I think that, you know, they do run stuff, they have to run stuff by him, you know, like this project doesn't happen if they didn't include him from the beginning when they first got the property, you know.
Right.
And I think with, you know, IDW moving forward, so I know they're losing a lot of their licensed stuff, but you know, like they're doing the creator owned stuff, and I think that Turtles probably, I would imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Turtles was always probably doing good numbers for them. That's why there's always spin-offs. There's, you know, they brought the Image Comics run back and let them finish off that run. They got a new crossover coming out. Tom Waltz is co-writing that one. So I think the Turtles are in good hands. And I think that if you're a Turtles fan,
that Armageddon game event that's going to be coming up now too.
Yeah.
Like a, you know, it's like they're one of their big storylines. So
yeah,
they definitely keep the property going.
Yeah. And
you can tell a lot of money is put into it, and which means that a lot of money must come from it, you know. So I think it is successful to them, and I think they've had a lot to do with keeping the Turtles like evergreen. Also, like probably since Mirage, it's probably one of the publishers that's probably had it the longest and treated it with the most respect. I mean,
for sure,
really easy to coast with the title on nostalgia alone. But they've changed and done so many different things with the property that clearly that's not what they're trying to do. You know,
no, they're trying to pay homage to all of the different versions of Turtles. You know, all of the cartoons,
their own sort of like path.
Yeah, I think it's just awesome what they've done. If you're a Turtles fan, I think all the stuff from IDW is really good, but Last Ronin definitely deserves all the praise that it's gotten.
It's one of the best book to come out in the last couple of years, and having now reread it recently, I can tell you it's also going to be something that I'll reread often.
Yes, I agree with that too. I mean, I read it over a couple days instead of reading it in one sitting, but it is just such a beautifully done book, such a great package.
Right from the beginning, like it doesn't start slow, it never slows.
Yeah,
and it just hits you. Every beat that's attempted and needed just lands.
Agreed, dude. And
it's so well executed. It's so well executed. That's the bottom line. It's just so well executed. It lands everything, and it's highly recommended, man. If you've been sitting on it and don't have a single issues, go out and get that hardcover. It's worth every single penny.
Yes, it's a really nice hardcover, and I mean, I think we were talking about too. I have all the different versions too. They have like the director's cut. They have the process stuff. I mean, I have
those as well.
Multiple variants. I love the book so much, and I can't say anything else on it. So go pick it up. And if you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Comic Lounge. I'll have all those links down below. Manny, I will share. You want any links you want to plug, and I'll drop them down there too.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram at it's I'd buy that for $1. It's underscore I'd buy that for $1 underscore.
Okay.
So it's a reference to RoboCop, and I post a lot of like comic book stuff on there. I do little mini reviews of dollar comics. You can find me on there. Same thing with Twitter, is the same handle, and then I'm always on the Cartoonist Kayfabe Ringside Seats website, interacting and posting. So there, and then obviously you can go to monkeysfightingrobots.com, and you can read some of my work there, and along with all the excellent work that other writers do. I don't do weekly reviews, but if that's your jam, we definitely have weekly reviews every week when the new books hit, sometimes before, and we have a lot of advanced previews too from DC. So if that's your jam, definitely check out the website. And that's about it, man. Thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun, and
yeah, dude,
I can talk Turtles anytime, so getting it to do with someone that I haven't done it before is always a pleasure.
Yeah, dude, I mean, I'm definitely always down to talk Turtles, so if you ever want to chat some more Turtles comics, I'm always up for it, man. And on that note, we're out.